Oh yeah, baby, let's go! When marimba rhythms start to play, this is when I start to get intrigued, because when it comes to one of the biggest offer sheet targets that has just put himself on the board, we have to have ourselves a discussion when it comes to the Swayman himself, Jeremy Swayman of the Boston Bruins. And yeah, you know I had to get a little bit of Sway love in there, right? The Michael Bublé rendition of that song is legendary, and I'd say it's a little bit relevant when talking about this hockey player, because when it comes to Jeremy Swayman, at the time of recording this audio, the guy is not signed for next season and beyond with the Boston Bruins. Now, that can change before this video gets publicized on YouTube, but for now, as I'm recording on the night of Sunday, July 7th, there has been no contract signed. But when it comes to that contract situation, oh boy, have things made themselves interesting. Because with the Boston Bruins and Jeremy Swayman not electing for salary arbitration the other day, it opens the door to a very real possibility that a team could swoop in and try to offer sheet this player. Now, let's go out there to an article on ProHockeyRumors.com. This was published by Brennan McLean from yesterday. Which teams make sense for a Jeremy Swayman offer sheet? It goes out there in a little bit more detail and describes the salary arbitration outcome. The deadline for teams to elect for arbitration came and went yesterday afternoon. Notably, the Boston Bruins decided not to elect for salary arbitration with goaltender Jeremy Swayman, leaving them vulnerable to a potential offer sheet since Swayman himself did not elect for arbitration either. The Bruins have $8.6 million in cap space to deal with, their lone restricted RFA, but several teams could put Boston in trouble. This article then hypothesizes that a potential offer sheet for Swayman could likely come in the Tier 5 range, which would need a salary of $6.87 million to $9.16 million, and would require the signing team to send their upcoming first, second, and third round picks. And these picks have to be those teams' own original first, seconds, and thirds to the Bruins if they're unwilling to match. Boston would likely match a max offer for Swayman even if it approaches the $9.16 million range, but they would become uncomfortably close to the salary cap ceiling for the upcoming season. Now pause before we dive into this a little bit further. Jeremy Swayman, is he worth 8-point-something mil? Is he worth 9-point-something mil? I would say so. Yeah, he's 25 years old and he just came off of a .916 save percentage year. 253 goals against in 44 games played in the regular season. He also had a .920 save percentage in 30 games played last year. .933 save percentage in this previous playoffs as well. In 12 games, 215 goals against. He has been a monster for such a long time, splitting the load with that Linus Ullmark in Boston, that it's kind of outstanding. The fact that they had such good goaltending for such a long time. Even if you go past the Swayman-Ullmark era, you go into prior years. Tuukka Rask was so good for so long. Tim Thomas right before that. I mean, that guy put up the best Stanley Cup Finals performance out of a goaltender ever, I'm pretty sure. So Boston has been kind of blessed with goaltending, and Jeremy Swayman is supposed to be that guy who carries the torch ever since the departure of Linus Ullmark to Ottawa a few weeks ago. And so with the Boston Bruins bolstering up the other parts of their lineup, they got their top-line center, they got their big defenseman, now they just have to lock in the goaltending. And there is none other than Jeremy Swayman to be the next best fit. He's younger than Ullmark, you could say he's better even though Ullmark did have that Vezina caliber year a little bit ago. Either way, Swayman is awesome, and there could be reasons for teams to go out there and target him in some sort of an offer sheet capacity, if they were to permit it. Now, if you want to talk about which teams could be in that Tier 5 range to give out an offer sheet for Jeremy Swayman, according to Cap Friendly, the only teams able to sign Swayman to that kind of deal would be the Buffalo Sabres, the Red Wings, Canadiens, Preds, Islanders, Flyers, and the Kraken. The Sabres and Red Wings seem unlikely, as they will already have limited cap space to make moves once they sign the rest of their RFAs, while the Preds and Islanders have already established goaltenders at the NHL level. Additionally, the Flyers and Kraken don't hold up enough cap space to cause Boston problems. Now pause, before we dive into any of the actually suggested ideas here, I just wanted to acknowledge, would it not be so funny if the Detroit Red Wings went out there and tried to offer sheet Jeremy Swayman of all people? Like, let alone the money that needs to be freed up for Raymond and Seider. That's always going to be there. But after going out and acquiring Cam Talbot, getting a healthy, supposedly, Ville Husso back into the rotation and still having the Lion King in there, if the Wings were to go out and get Jeremy Swayman on top of that, have 4 guys who could be NHL players rotating around through 2 spots, we've seen how messy and complicated the triple team goaltending trio works out at the NHL level with teams like Montreal and even Detroit in last year's worth of play. So why not take it a step further and get a 4th guy in there and have this 4th guy be the best guy out of all of those players? Of course, the Red Wings are not going to get involved in this, but if they wanted to, they technically could. But which teams actually do make sense if you wanted to talk about this? Why not theorize about reigniting one of the best rivalries in the game? This article says that the Montreal Canadiens only have 2 pending RFAs left to sign with just over $10 million in cap space in Arber Xhekaj and Justin Barron. Neither player projects to cut too much into that cap and wouldn't necessarily prohibit Montreal from making a move of this magnitude. The Habs are not far removed from making a statement via an offer sheet as they infamously signed Sebastian Aho to a 5-year, $42 million offer later matched by the Hurricanes. Now, the article then goes over a few extra things about the Canadiens and how they could be suitors here. It's pretty much just the Canadiens that are talked about in this article, but I wanted to highlight this idea as well. Because obviously, Jeremy Swayman going from Boston to Montreal would be absolute treason in the state of Massachusetts. The guy might get crucified by the time he returns to TD Garden. But if this were the case, it would give the Montreal Canadiens a lot more certainty in net. I get it, you could say that Sam Montembeault was supposed to be the guy, and he had proven himself as that guy towards the end of the most prior season. But Jeremy Swayman is, how do I say it? He's better. And that, of course, would be a huge upgrade for the Montreal Canadiens in net, although it would be a little bit of a slap in the face to Sam Montembeault since he did improve as the year went on. The article also says here that, as of right now, former goaltender Carey Price's $10.5 million AAV salary for the upcoming year has not been officially factored into the LTIR space for the Habs. Montreal would not need to put Price's contract on the LTIR this season if they choose to, because their cap space would already buoy up to $20.66 million, giving the Canadiens all the room in the world to safely add a guy like Jeremy Swayman. The draft picks are also talked about here, and they would be appropriately fit for Montreal if they wanted to do this. And plus, we've talked about this a bunch over the past few years, but Montreal has already gotten themselves a good prospect pool in general. Do you really need more picks? Do you need more guys that you'll draft in 2025 or whatever that won't be available to your team until 2028? It's kind of a mixed bag there. You could debate philosophically what do you think the best course of action should be for the Canadiens, but at the end of the day, I wanted to talk about this idea of the Canadiens offer sheeting a guy like Jeremy Swayman from the Boston Bruins. Do you think this is actually a worthwhile thing to think about? Or is it just total BS, total bogus? The Canadiens would not even try to think about this kind of a thing, even though it would significantly upgrade their team, and even though they're one of the only teams in the NHL that actually would be able to do it with no real problems. So if you're a Boston Bruins fan, let me know your thoughts about Jeremy Swayman potentially being offer sheeted by the Canadiens. If you're a Habs fan, what are your thoughts about this going the other way? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99 and bye.